Hey everybody, today I want to show you the latest version of the Gearwrench 120XP locking flex head ratchet. This is model 81380 with a 7-inch 1/4-inch drive ratchet and a 13.5-inch 3/8-inch drive ratchet. Now my go-to 3/8-inch drive ratchet has been this Husky 100 tooth locking flex head ratchet, which is also made by Apex Tool Group, the guys that own Gearwrench, and has been pretty much identical to the previous generation 120XP aside from having 20 fewer teeth. Seriously though, these are fantastic ratchets for the money and available at your local Home Depot. And if we look at the locking mechanism for this guy, you can see it uses this nice little lever here that's very easy to move into and out of position, which allows the head to flex. But that's also one of the downsides, because this can accidentally get knocked while you're working with the tool, and you can see how easily the head flops away from the main body of the ratchet. So you could inadvertently flip this to the disengaged position and lose your detent that you're on. With the new 120XP, they moved to a push button style. So if I go to this side and I push it there, you can see the button pops out, and now you can change the position of the flex head to lock it back into position. I just press that button back, no more movement. So not only have they changed how this thing locks, but if I unlock this, you can see no matter how hard I shake it, this is not coming out of position. So they've significantly increased the tension of the detent here to hold it on the tooth of the flex head mechanism, which is a good and a bad thing, because now you have to make a more concerted effort to change the position of this. But also it's kind of weird to me because it doesn't really feel like the force it takes to go from one position or one tooth to the next is equal. Some of them requires more force, some of them less, and that inconsistency is really annoying when I'm trying to adjust this. And that leads to being more difficult to change one tooth at a time. You may skip over multiple teeth and overshoot where you really want to be. Another thing I'll say is by putting a little bit of grease on these teeth, it doesn't really help the tension moving from one tooth to another. So, I mean, if you decide to put some grease here, I don't know, it's really kind of a negligible benefit. I mean, especially since it's exposed and you can, get filth on it, or you can accidentally get it on yourself when you're, handling this area. So I don't really think that's very helpful. I do wish that this wasn't so stiff, because, well, when you got it unlocked, you want to be able to flex it, and why bother making it so difficult? That part doesn't really make sense to me, but I really do like how this is a push button lock so that you're not going to have any accidental disengagement. Looking at the rotation selector, they're still using a flip lever, right? On this Husky or the old 120XP, you have this guy, and over here you have this shorter one, which with nicely marked on and off markings on it. Honestly though, this older Husky one has a little bit more positive engagements, flipping between the off and on positions than this little stubby one. It's a little bit mushy. There's not as much of a tactile click, so I do prefer the feel of this Husky lever more. Out of the box, the teeth, obviously feel incredibly fine, being a 120 tooth. The clicks are pretty good, but compared to the 100 I have here, I still feel like the clicks are a lot more pronounced, and at least if you're holding it here, you have a better tactile feel for them. In comparison, I would say the clicks of the teeth engaging are a little bit more mushy feeling on the 120XP. That said, how much does the feeling of the clicks really matter? Not that much. In terms of the back drag as I'm spinning the chuck here, Gearwrenches typically don't have very much back drag, and this feels pretty nice compared to this older 100 tooth. I would say it's less, and that's even after I've lubricated this one while in regular use. This one I have not done anything to yet, so maybe this cleans up a little bit more once we put some lubrication inside the head. Now, one of the other benefits of the new 120XP compared to the previous generation, or this 100 tooth, is how they've really slimmed down the head here. Like you can see me holding these next to each other, right? This 100 tooth here is quite a bit wider, right? It's got this teardrop shape versus here. It's a lot slimmer, you know, more straight edge on the side of the ratchet head itself. You will get more working room with this, and in addition to that, also the head thickness is also slimmer. So overall, a much more compact head, which is really nice. I don't know why the only length they made the 3/8 in is like 13.5 inches, because why would you go to such a slim head for a longer handle? I kind of would have wished that they had a shorter model, kind of like this Husky. I guess what it means is a lot of stuff that I was using this 3/8 for, I'm going to be using the 1/4 inch on instead. Yeah, kind of interesting. I wish they offered some more lengths and shorter lengths. And speaking of getting into the head itself, you can go ahead and take a T9 screwdriver, undo these 2 screws on the head. And we can see there is a little bit of thread locker that they pre-install on there. Then we can remove the cover plate and get a nice view of the internals, right? We see our main ratchet cog there, and then we've got our dual pawls, you know, one on top and there's another one on the bottom, because this is a dual pawl mechanism in order to get the 120 clicks. And you know, the cam for the direction selection. So, you know, same overall design as the previous 120 XP internal, and same with, you know, that Husky 100, but obviously everything just shrunk down even smaller. And we can also see there's already a decent amount of grease in here, so I really don't think if I add any extra, you know, lubrication, whatever, it's going to improve the feel all that much. So we can see the balls shift as I move the direction selector. And really, you know, that's all to it. Not really different than other designs using this dual pawl architecture, especially the ones made by Apex Tool Group. So after putting a little bit more lubrication in there and sealing up the head, how does it feel? Well, it pretty much still feels the same, which is, you know, not completely unexpected, since we did see there was a decent amount of grease in there. Now, you know, some people probably going to wonder, wow, it's such tiny teeth, can this thing really take much load? You know, I don't know. I haven't seen anything to say that it doesn't, but I also haven't seen anything to say that it does, aside from, well, you know, why would you make a product that can't handle up to normal abuse? Gearwrench tends to have a pretty decent reputation, so I would have hoped that their design and engineering teams would have thought of that while making this or shrinking the mechanism down. So of course, curiosity is getting the better of me, and well, I wonder what the spring on this detent looks like that makes this so stiff. So I'm going to take a 3mm hex, unscrew the head here, we'll let this head come off, and then let's see, aha! Well, we can just see the spring here. So I guess if I really wanted to, what I could do is I could cut a coil off of the spring to make it shorter, or just find a replacement spring instead to put in here that's not quite so stiff, and then maybe this will be just the right tension. And we can see if we play with this lock and unlock button down here, right, that makes that detent or that tooth go up and down to engage the teeth on the actual headpiece. So I found some other springs from other toys of mine that look to be the same diameter as the spring that came with this guy, and so you can see, you know, this big one fits over here over the detent, and it also fits inside here. So maybe what I'll try doing is I'll try clipping a couple coils off here to give a similar length or slightly lower spring rate than the original one here, and see how that feels. So let's see how my modified spring here compares to the stock spring. We'll go put this back on the detent, slide it inside, and we'll unlock this so it can go all the way down. And we can put the head back on and get that screw in. Then take our 3mm and tighten this guy back up. Well, no joke, I just massively improved the swivel function of this ratchet, in my opinion. The amount of force it takes to go from tooth to tooth is a lot less, but it's still plenty strong. Like if I try and wiggle this around, it's not flopping on me, and you can see I've got this unlocked. If I give it a really hard, wiggle, I can get it to shift a bit, but honestly, that was a lot harder than it would normally be when I'd have it unlocked anyways. So pretty cool. Yeah, easy enough to just go get a different spring or find a spring. I think this donor spring I used came from the magazine release of an AR. So you can just go buy one of those springs, which are plentiful and really cheap, and just cut it down to size till you get the spring rate you want. But man, that makes this part so much nicer. So overall, I wouldn't call the new 120 XP locking flex heads a clear win over the previous ones, but they are definitely the ones to go for if you need a lower profile head with that clearance. When I bought this, I was fully intending on obsoleting my Husky 100 tooth. I still think I'm going to be reaching for this though. It was really cool seeing how we could improve the swivel function by just swapping out the spring on the detent here. For the little 1/4 inch, this uses a much smaller spring, probably similar to something you'd find in like a clicky pen, but I never found that the tension on the detents was too much like I did on this. So honestly, this one doesn't need to be swapped out like the 3/8 does. My guess would be if you had a 1/2 inch, you'd probably find something similar, and you may want to swap that out as well. But at least for this 1/4 and 3/8, after that little mod, this is a lot more usable, but I really still think this is a bit long for what I want in a 3/8. So I wish they had something a bit shorter.